On December 25, 2001, Princess Alice, Duchess of Gloucester, celebrated a feat not too many royals and even commoners enjoyed. She celebrated her 100th birthday. Frail and confined to her wheelchair, she nevertheless enjoyed the event dedicated not only to honour that milestone in her life, but possibly to serve as a last hurrah to a lady who spent most of her life in service to the British royal family and to the public in general. Princess Alice's dedication to duty was legendary, and had a legend of its own attached to it. In her memoirs, published in 1983, she recounted a life-changing experience which had led her to do all she could to help others. When she was just 14, she found herself caught in a strong current in the Solway Firth and prayed for help, promising to devote her life to public service if she survived. She later said that almost straight away, she found rocks which helped her to make her way to shore, and then spent years looking for a way to help others until her royal marriage provided her with an opportunity, and, as she wrote, a very secret pledge was honoured. That royal wedding, which changed her life forever, followed early years, which had been a strange mix of the traditional and the unconventional. Born Lady Alice Christabel Montague, Douglas Scott, on December 25, 1901, she had enjoyed a privileged upbringing at her family homes in London and Scotland. Her father, John, succeeded as Duke of Buccleuch and Queensberry soon after the start of World War I, by which time Alice was attending St James's School for Girls in West Malvern. After her time there, she enjoyed a stay in Paris before being presented at court soon after turning 18. So far, so very conventional. However, Alice was never afraid of showing her differences. She described her debut in society, at a ball for King George V and Queen Mary's only daughter, as miserable, and confessed she soon became bored with the seemingly glamorous outings and dances that made up the life of an upper-class young woman. She had also caught the travel bug, and her first major trip to Kenya resulted in her developing her skills as a painter and selling several works to finance more journeys. Another trip, to India, saw the Duke's daughter dress up in traditional Afghan clothing and smuggle herself into Afghanistan to experience life among its people. Alice may well have kept on travelling had her father not fallen ill. She was asked to return to England at the start of 1935, as his health began to fail, and, soon afterwards, she renewed her acquaintance with an old friend from her early years, George Fee's third son, Prince Henry. Love soon blossomed, and their engagement was announced in August that year, with the wedding set for Westminster Abbey in November. However, on October 19, 1935, the Duke of Buccleuch died, and the royal wedding was moved to the private chapel of Buckingham Palace as a mark of respect. Her wedding dress was designed by Norman Hartnell. In his giddy 1955 autobiography, Silver and Gold, Hartnell noted Lady Alice's beautifully moulded cheekbones and the smile which someone has described as like that of a forest gnome, when she came to his chic, Bruton Street salon in a stately 18th century townhouse, and they discussed the wedding dress. Strict simplicity was the bride's command, which must have chilled Hartnell's marrow, as he loved over-the-top theatrical effects and the jolly twinkle of sequins. Hartnell did, however, approve of Lady Alice's insistence on a tulle veil, feeling that a drifting cloud of crisp modern tulle is much more becoming than dowdy heirloom lace that might hang, lank and discoloured with age, like some attenuated judge's wig. Hartnell did as he was told and produced a dress of modest simplicity, with long, narrow sleeves and a high neckline draped into a nosegay of artificial orange blossom. The cathedral train was appropriate to the intended setting, Westminster Abbey. Because of the dim lighting in the Abbey, it was considered that the dress should not be in stark white, but in a soft tone with something of the glimmer of pearl, noted Hartnell in his autobiography, discreetly overlooking the fact that the bride, at 34, then considered relatively old to wed, perhaps also wanted a less maidenly tone. Hartnell's dresses for the adult bridesmaids were similarly austere, featuring wider sleeves and wider necklines, the latter decorated with artificial flowers. He initially conceived sophisticated empire-style dresses for the young bridesmaids, but their grandfather, King George V, requested something girlish instead, and the original concept was replaced with short dresses of pale pink satin, trimmed with graduated tiers of ruffled tulle. The bride wore an ermine blanket stole in the glass carriage on her way to the palace to guard against the winter chill. In deference to the circumstances of the wedding, there were no photographs during the ceremony itself, but afterwards the beaming bride and her diffident royal groom took to the famous balcony at Buckingham Palace, where she waved to the crowd with a whisking hand movement never seen before or since. A stool was brought so that Princess Margaret Rose could see the crowd, and the crowd could see her tulle ruffles. In addition to the formal wedding party portraits, the bride sat for the fashionable photographer Madame Yvonne, famed for her surrealist portraits of society beauties and her innovations in Vivex colour printing. In Madame Yvonne's portrait, Hartnell's glimmer of pearl satin clearly reads as blush pink, and, rather astonishingly, the photographer has placed a bouquet of very dark red roses at the bride's feet, perhaps intended to complement and set off the pink. Hartnell's Pink Symphony was well received. "We are very pleased," said the formidable Queen Mary. "We think everything is very, very pretty." Henry and Alice, now Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, began married life at Aldershot with every intention of taking a more backstage role in royal life as the prince pursued his army interests. However, just a year after their wedding, the abdication of King Edward VIII changed everything. They began to take on more engagements and duties to support the new King and Queen, George VI and Elizabeth, with the Duchess of Gloucester adding a wide range of patronages to her royal rota. During World War II, Princess Alice joined the Women's Auxiliary Air Force and became its head in 1943. She was also involved with work for the Red Cross and the Women's Voluntary Service for Civil Defence. The war years also brought change to her family. After 2 miscarriages, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester celebrated the birth of Prince William in 1941 and Prince Richard in 1944. Alice took her 2 young sons to Canberra as the war came to an end when her husband was made Governor-General of Australia, a position he held until 1947. On their return to the UK, Henry and Alice took on further engagements, while the Duchess of Gloucester was also Colonel-in-Chief of several regiments including the Royal Hussars and the Royal Corps of Transport, as well as being patron of the Girl Guides. She was a permanent fixture at major royal events, always smiling, always calm, always discreetly in the background. But behind palace doors, life proved hard for Alice in her later years. In 1965, her husband lost control of their car as they were returning from Winston Churchill's funeral, and both suffered injuries. The Duke of Gloucester went on to have several strokes in the following. Their elder son, William, was killed in a plane crash on August 28, 1972, and with the Duke of Gloucester in poor health, the Duchess of Gloucester was unsure if she should tell her husband about their son's death, despite the condolences pouring in. The Prime Minister at the time, Edward Heath, was one of the first to send a message of condolence to both the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester and the Queen. Princess Alice admitted herself, "I was completely stunned and have never been quite the same since, though I have tried to persuade myself that it was better to have known and lost him than never to have had him at all." In her memoirs first published in 1981, the Memoirs of Princess Alice, Duchess of Gloucester, and revised in 1991 as The Memories of 90 Years, the Duchess revealed that she never did tell Prince Henry that their son was killed. However, she did go on to say he may have learned about Prince William's death from television coverage. Alice continued to lead a busy life as a working royal even after Henry died in 1974, and she also found time to write her memoirs, published in 1983, another royal first. However, in her later years, she began to scale back her role before retiring for good, just before she turned 100. That landmark birthday was acknowledged with royal celebrations. Princess Alice, Duchess of Gloucester, died in her sleep on October 29, 2004. Her contribution to royal life was summed up in a short statement from Buckingham Palace which read, "The Queen remembers with gratitude Princess Alice's service to the monarchy and to the country." It was a simple but heartfelt tribute to a woman who had embraced royal life and all it brought her with determination while always keeping true to her promise to help others. Alice, the quiet princess, made a big mark on the House of Windsor.